Life after Foals, Empty Nesters. Twilight Velvet was humming to herself, trying to ignore the relative quiet of the house while baking a lavender pie. She took in its sweet aroma and sighed with contentment. Lavender was her favorite flower to consume, not only because it matched the color of the streaks in her mane, but also because it reminded her of her daughter's beautiful lavender coat. It didn't hurt that it was a natural breath freshener, much like mint, and her husband always seemed to kiss her more passionately after she had eaten some lavender. Nightlight had once said that he eats lavender less just so he could enjoy her kisses more. She checked the pie again.
Good, it's finally done. Twilight, the pie is ready! Twilight?
Silence answered her. That blasted, thick, oppressive silence. Twilight Velvet had to remember why it was so quiet, and she sagged.
Oh, right. Twilight is at Celestia School for Gifted Unicorns. And to think I was so happy when Twilight not only got into the school, but was made Celestia's personal student. I would have never thought that this house could feel so empty. That my own daughter would be so caught up in studying that she wouldn't even have time to write me letters.
She huffed, as her mood further soured, her thoughts brooding.
Shining Armor's no better. He's attending the Canterlot Royal Military High School for Colton Fillies that intend to enter military service. As such, he lives in a dorm room that is very similar to a military barracks, and is only seldomly allowed to come back home during breaks and holidays. But still, he could write to me.
Twilight Velvet shook her head and tried to give her foals the courtesy of assuming that they were too busy with homework, or making friends, or having dates. By Celestia, she wanted grand foals, of course, but her foals were much too young for that. At least right now. Her thoughts grew melancholy with all the reflecting of her previous hopes and dreams.
To this day, I don't understand how my son has a military-style cutie mark when military service doesn't run in the family. Or how my daughter inherited such strong magical power. Neither me nor her father are especially gifted in magic. Although, I suppose in ages past, our family was considered to be magically important, to a degree.
She took the entire pie with her to the living room couch, and started to eat the whole thing. Normally, she might have saved half the pie, or at least a slice, for her husband, but she was far too distraught for that. No, this pie was hers. She made it. It's hers. She finished off the pie and tidied up the house. Of course, with no foals to make fresh messes, the house stayed remarkably clean. It didn't kill nearly enough time.
What should I do next? Oh, Bucket, I'm going to unwind.
She laid down on the couch and opened a magazine. She quickly got absorbed in an article and didn't hear her husband come home. Nightlight called to his wife.
Velvet, I'm home! Velvet?
He walked into the living room and saw Twilight Velvet on the couch, crying while holding a magazine.
Velvet?
She jumped with a start.
Nightlight! I didn't hear you come in. How was work?
Nightlight looked concerned. Work was work. Why are you crying? Twilight Velvet wiped her eyes with a foreleg.
Oh, no reason. I was just reading this article about the top 10 ways you failed as a parent without even knowing it.
Nightlight groaned.
Velvet, we haven't failed. There's only a 10% acceptance rate into the Canterlot Royal Military High School. 3.34% if you consider that they take an equal number of unicorns, pegasi, and earth ponies in every year. There is, at most, maybe a 1% acceptance rate into Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns. And maybe a 1 in a million shot of Twilight being the princess's personal student. I can only think of one other pony that Celestia has had as a personal student in my entire lifetime. It just doesn't happen. If anything, we've succeeded far beyond most parents' wildest dreams. For what parent doesn't want their foals to have a better and more successful life than them?
Twilight Velvet sniveled.
Okay, maybe you're right. But how am I supposed to spend all this extra time? I miss them. We're too young to be empty nesters.
Nightlight smiled.
Let's worry about that a little later. In the meantime, let's just have a date night. just like old times.
That perked Twilight Velvet up, and she was more than happy to go out with her husband. Nightlight took Twilight Velvet to one of the nicer restaurants in the upper parts of the capital. The place was called Les Canterlots, near the castle itself. They were sad immediately, the restaurants not being at all that busy during the week, combined with being too expensive for ponies with casual taste. The menus were also promptly brought, and Nightlight ordered hot tea and iced water for both of them while they were looking over their options. It wasn't the first time that they had been there, but it had been a while. When the waiter brought the tea and water, he asked them politely if they were ready to order. Velvet smiled and pointed at the menu.
I'll have the mac and cheese pasta.
The waiter frowned, and Nightlight cleared his throat.
Velvet, dear, that's from the kids' menu.
Velvet smiled.
I know. It was also Twilight's favorite meal the last time we brought her here.
The waiter didn't say anything when Nightlight sighed and continued.
But it's not enough food for a grown mare. You'll be hungry again in no time.
Velvet frowned and nodded. She considered his point for a moment, perking right back up when an idea hit her.
You're absolutely right. I'll also get a big cold salad, Shining's favorite meal. Between both of them, I should be fine.
Nightlight's sad smile seemed to set the mood, and he looked back up at the waiter.
I'll have the same, I guess.
The waiter cleared his throat. Of course, sir. I'll make sure the kitchen starts on it right away. Nightlight turned to Velvet.
We should go wash our hooves before the food arrives. It won't take them long to make such simple meals.
Velvet smiled and agreed completely. As they headed towards the restrooms, the waiter went to speak to the manager. Sir, we may have a problem with that couple. The manager frowned at the waiter.
Oh? In what way?
The waiter fidgeted. I'm not sure they can afford to pay the bill. They both ordered off the kids' menu. 2 meals each, granted, but the kids' menu. The manager nodded.
Go ahead and have the kitchen start on it anyways. I'll speak to them when they come back to their table from the restroom.
After a moment of consideration, the manager opted to speak with the husband alone instead of potentially embarrassing him in front of his wife, and waited outside the stallion's room for the guests to appear. She was quick to greet Nightlight when he emerged from the restroom.
Sir, a moment of your time, please?
Nightlight nodded.
Of course. How may I help you?
The manager smiled cautiously.
I am the manager of this establishment. The waiter had some concerns about your order. I was wondering if there was a problem.
Nightlight shook his head with a sad smile.
Oh, nothing you can fix. I have 2 children with my wife, and she ordered our Colton Philly's favorite meals out of nostalgia. And I decided to do the same because it felt right. You see, we lost our foals recently to...
The manager raised a hoof.
Oh, say no more. I understand completely. Please, enjoy your meals, and I'll send something special to the table.
Nightlight's smile was uncertain.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it, ma'am.
Nightlight got back to the table and frowns to himself.
I wonder what that was about.
Twilight Velvet returned to the table just in time to see the waiter bringing over all 4 meals, along with a bottle of the Canterlot red wine on ice, with 2 glasses. Velvet's eyes went wide.
Oh, what a special surprise! My favorite wine! And here I thought you didn't remember things like that.
Nightlight smiled tightly.
Yeah, lucky guess.
Velvet leaned over and gave her husband a kiss on the cheek. Nightlight blushed under the extra attention, not wanting to cause a scene in the restaurant. The waiter poured the wine, eyeing the couple with sympathy. He cleared his throat with a light grace. I suggest you allow the wine to breathe for a few minutes before enjoying it. Bon appetit. Velvet ate both of her meals, eyeing the empty seats at the table as if she had wished her foals were here with them. She stopped herself short of actually talking to the empty chairs, if only to avoid embarrassing herself and her husband. Despite the romantic aspects of the restaurant and the good wine, she just couldn't bring herself to hold a conversation, even with the stallion she loved more than any other. Nightlight ate quietly as well, and they both enjoyed the wine. He was very in tune to his wife's melancholy mood. Nightlight made sure that Velvet got 3 glasses of wine versus his own 2 glasses, draining the bottle. It was unsurprising that they both managed to eat all the food with no leftovers. Not that a restaurant this fancy offered a carry-away option. He quietly asked for the check, allowing Velvet to enjoy the last of her wine uninterrupted. The manager returned to their table.
Your meal is on the house. I hope they have a lovely evening, and you have my condolences.
The manager walked away, before Nightlight or Velvet could question her about what she meant. Twilight Velvet leaned heavily against her husband as they left the restaurant. The staff all seemed to be watching them. Once they cleared the doors, Velvet turned to her husband.
What was that about?
Nightlight went red in the face.
Well, given how you were acting and something that I said, they might have thought that we lost our foals.
Velvet pursed her lips.
We did. Kinda. We lost our foals to the greater good of society.
Nightlight smiled at her timidly.
Yes, but I think that they thought we lost them.
Velvet's eye twitched.
Oh my, am I really acting like a mother in mourning?
Nightlight winced.
Well, you barely spoke to me, and you were looking at the chairs where our children would have sat while enjoying their favorite meals. I could see how the wrong conclusion could be drawn. I really want to go back in and insist on paying the tab, but I don't want to embarrass the manager for drawing the wrong conclusion to what I was saying. I mean, she didn't even let me finish my sentence.
Velvet bit her lip.
I'm sorry. I guess it wasn't a very romantic date. What do you want to do now?
Nightlight considered his options while they were still walking away from the restaurant. He smiled warmly at her again.
Let's go to Twilight's favorite park. It's been a while since we just walked around and relaxed.
Velvet kissed Nightlight in appreciation of the lovely idea. He chuckled.
You ate an entire lavender pie today, didn't you?
Velvet's face went completely red.
How did you know?
Nightlight's eyes glinted in the moonlight.
Even after eating dinner, I can still taste the lavender on your lips. Plus, well, there was the empty pie pan on the coffee table when I got home.
Velvet face-hoved, while her husband continued to laugh at the situation.
I'll leave it to him to have noticed something like that.
As they walked, she started to appreciate the humor in the situation, even if it was at her expense. The park was beautiful in the moonlight, and also a little romantic given no pony was there at all. Nightlight escorted her to one of the larger swings meant to teens or adults. Velvet sat down on the swing, enjoying the night breeze when Nightlight started to gently push her. Being pushed on the swing made her feel like a filly again. The gentle breeze blowing through her mane reminded her of simpler times, of love without obligation, a beautiful chance to be a wife without having to be a mother. She missed those days with her husband when they were newlyweds. They got that rundown tower of a house as their starter home and just never moved on to something bigger. They loved the house just as much as they loved each other.
I love you, Nightlight. Have I told you that recently?
He continued to push her gently.
No, you haven't.
His simple statement shocked her, but he didn't sound bitter. He looked over her shoulder, back at her husband.
Are you upset with me?
Nightlight snorted, while he pushed the swing just a little harder.
Of course not.
Velvet had tears in her eyes as she came to the sudden realization that while her husband was being honest with her, she had completely overlooked how she treated him most days.
How could you not be angry?
He sighed and gave another gentle push.
I love you, Velvet. You are from an important noble family and nearly got the Sohns to marry me. I miss the early years of our marriage when it was just the two of us, but I wouldn't trade watching you be a mother for anything. You love our foals more than life itself, and my heart couldn't hold more love for you than it already does. You're distraught about being an empty nester, but I had hoped to reclaim the earlier parts of our marriage that we set aside when we decided to have foals. Perhaps I misjudged just how important being a mother is to you. I'm sorry if I'm being selfish about it.
Velvet gasped.
You have every right to love me, and every right to have an opinion about our marriage. I guess the sticking point of this situation is that I have nothing to do. You have a career that you enjoy. My only job was raising those foals. and I expected to be doing that for another 7 to 10 years. But now, they're just gone. They are already what they are supposed to be, to become what they wanted to become. And look at me. I'm too old for another foal, to go out and get a regular job. And too young for grand foals. What am I supposed to do? Just sit in the house every day, waiting for you to come home?
Nightlight smiled.
Of course not. You could join a few social clubs, maybe make some new friends. As a noble, socializing should be second nature to you. With Twilight as our personal student, I bet even Celestia would let you be your friend, which could get you more time with Twilight, and maybe even Shining Armor.
Velvet sighed at that.
If I was okay with spending all day socializing like that, I might not have ignored my father's advice about marrying below my station. I'm just not that kind of pony. I'm more outgoing than the average shy pony, but Twilight does get her lack of wanting to socialize from me.
Nightlight snorted.
Shy indeed.
Some of the things you've done in the bedroom? Velvet cut him off.
Or not to be spoken about outside where some pony might hear us.
Nightlight chortled.
Fair enough, I was only teasing anyways. But that also kinda brings up my next point. You have ideas for 6 romance novels in that writing desk of yours. You've never had time to start on them. But now? What's stopping you? Write your stories. Publish them. Who cares what any pony thinks? Just be you, and have fun doing it. We can reclaim that missing part of our marriage from before we had foals. And, if you get bored writing love stories, you can start plotting dates and marriages for Twilight. Unicorns are fond of their arranged marriages after all. That should keep you busy until Shining gets married.
Velvet grinned wickedly.
That, my love, is a plan I can get behind. Of course, my dear. You can still have a career. You just have to make it yourself. And honestly, we aren't really empty nesters. We are on our 2nd honeymoon and born-again newlywed phase of love and marriage.
Velvet hummed at the idea.
I like the sound of that. But where does it lead?
Nightlight kissed her passionately, enjoying second-hand lavender.
It gives us both what we crave in the here and now, and leads us to the promised land of Grand Foals.
God, relationships are such a beautiful thing. Especially when you have someone who truly loves you and doesn't screw you over, it's just keep them. They are a keeper. Anywho, let's get on to our romantic donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, Star 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and IronSky. Metrock 109, JockeTF, Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel, Sky, Austin, Rolan, 2Hex, Star Brother, Mordred, Omicron, Library, Runeside, 9052, Wilkers, Twinkie, Rice, Shadow Moon, Luigi 88, Chancellor Crest, Big Smoke, Dick 69, Bobcat, GGF, Murder Princess, JE 1101, Caladis, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.